Hello, my people.
Hi
Super
guys.
excited to have Brooklyn Sia here. Super excited to have you, Sia. Thank you. And Jen from Jersey. Got my Jersey girl. So excited to see both of you today. And thank you so much for being on here with me. We are talking relocation. What in the world are the differences between our three states, which you would think New York and New Jersey would be pretty similar, but I've been schooled on how different they are. So super excited to share it with everybody about what you need to know before you move.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So we're going to start off with the differences in the area. So talk to me, ladies. So are you seeing an influx of people moving in or moving out of your state? And what do they need to know?
Yeah, so we get a ton of people that move out of our state. In
Do
New
they live in
Jersey,
Melbourne?
I think Sia probably has the same thing where everyone is just moving out of New Jersey and New York, right? Like we get in New Jersey, we actually get a lot of people coming in from New York
Mhm.
because so I'm North Jersey, right? Like we're very close to the George Washington Bridge, Lincoln Tunnel, Holland Tunnel. So we get a lot of New Yorkers that come in. But then a lot of the people who end up selling around here are relocating, North Carolina, your area, South Carolina, Florida, Texas are big ones that they go to, but we get a lot of that here.
Absolutely. So in New Jersey, how long does it take, like an average closing? So you're working with a buyer, you identify the house, they want to write an offer. What are your steps? Because I know New York is different than North Carolina. I'm curious about New Jersey.
Yeah, so New Jersey, I think we probably have one of those longest times to close. Like a typical closing here usually is about 45 days. If you're cash, it could be sooner. You can have a 2 week closing, a 3 week closing. But most people here are financing, so I would say 45 days is the norm. You could do, 60 days if you need a little bit more time, or you could try push it to 30 days, but on average 45 days.
Yeah. So here our average is 30 days from the time they find a house to when we go into contract. And one of the big differences I see, and I don't know about New Jersey, but I know New York, is that attorneys. So whenever I have clients moving in from one of your states,
Yeah.
they're always super concerned that they never talk to an attorney until the day of closing here. So they will get our closing disclosure about 3 days in advance before the
Right.
closing, but they'll never actually speak to an attorney. So we are an attorney state. Attorneys do our closings. However, they do not draft any of the contract paperwork.
Right.
So
Yeah. So here we have attorneys, and specifically in North and Central Jersey, right? Because actually, if you go to South Jersey, they don't even use attorneys. They do everything directly with title. But
Yeah.
in North and Central Jersey, we do use attorneys. So what happens is a lot of times when I send referrals out, and I refer them to other agents like in Florida, different areas that they don't use attorneys, oftentimes they're very hesitant because they're so used to the attorneys being involved in the transaction here that they're like, what do you mean there's no
They
attorney?
write the contract there, right?
Yeah, so the realtors in Northern New Jersey, we prepare the contracts.
Okay.
So we prepare them, but they don't become legally binding until you have an attorney review it with you. We have attorney review periods. So which I know is different than SIA in New York because you guys don't prepare contracts. The attorneys
we
prepare them.
our offers are not even our offer to purchase doesn't mean anything until
Yeah.
we don't collect any money. We cannot bind the seller or the buyer, and they do their inspections before they get a contract, which people
Yeah.
do not understand that.
See, it's
Yeah, I
it's
know.
totally, yeah, it's totally opposite here. So Jennifer, what were you saying? You said it's not, how's it different than Sia's?
So what happens is because I get a lot of New Yorkers and it's like tough for them to understand this. What happens in New York usually, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Sia, is that you guys go and you send out like a deal sheet, right? Something like that. Like you send out an actual, this is what my offer is, and then if they accept
Non-bindable
it,
deal sheet. Yeah,
correct.
non-binding.
Yeah, so if they accept it, then what happens in New York is that you have to go do your inspection right away and you essentially negotiate and then you go under contract. But in New York and New Jersey, it's backwards. So in New Jersey, what happens is the realtor prepares the actual offer. It's a contract, but it's not legally binding until the attorneys review it. So you prepare it. Let's say your seller, the seller accepts it. They're going to sign that. And then once everybody has signed, it gets sent to a seller's attorney and buyer's attorney. They'll review it together, and that takes a couple days. Once they review and they say, okay, we're good to go on all the terms, the numbers, everything, you'll be under contract. But then once you're under contract, you have 2 weeks essentially to send in your deposit and do your inspection. So basically, as a realtor, right, like as a buyer's agent, your goal is to get your buyer through attorney review quickly so that you can lock it in, be under contract, and then go ahead and do your inspections and everything else. Whereas I know in New York, usually your goal is to do that inspection super quick so that you can get under contract, correct?
Let me ask you a question though. In New Jersey, what if the seller gets another offer while they're doing their inspections? Can they entertain them? No, right?
So, say that one more time. If the seller what?
If the seller, while you're in an inspection period, another offer comes in, can your seller say, never mind, let's go with that offer?
No, because you wouldn't be doing inspection until you're under contract. So when they're under contract, they can't, they're not supposed to be showing the house. They can't back out. They can't do anything. If you're in attorney review, that's a different story, right? Like while you're in attorney review, technically they've already accepted an offer, but while they're in attorney review, they can continue to show the house. They can really do whatever they want. If they get something better, they can cancel. But once that buyer is under contract and they're sending in a deposit and everything, you're locked in with that person. You're not, allowed to do that.
So it's interesting, even the differences in your two states. Say here, we don't do any of that. Well, what we do is it is a contract. It is a legally binding contract.
You do the
buyers
you
sign.
do it. Wow.
I draft it. Yes. So it's a fill in the blank form. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but our North Carolina provides us with the documentation. So we just fill in the blanks, but attorney does not get it. We get under contract. The attorney literally gets it. I mean, I'll send it to him the day we go under contract, them, him, she, whatever. Send it to them the day we go under contract. However, they don't really review it until, they'll order a title. They'll do some background stuff for it, prepare the closing disclosure, but really and truly an attorney's not going over it until like 3 or 4 days in advance. And they're definitely not talking to you until the day of closing, which is super hard pill for New York and New Jersey people to grasp. We do all of our inspections once it goes under contract. But again, that's before an attorney in the middle. And Sia, you dumbfounded me the other day when you said, you could think, you're negotiating and everything's good, but if somebody comes in with a better offer, your people are not, it's not a contract.
You have to tell the seller. You have to tell the seller it's your job. Hopefully for a couple of dollars, the seller, because if these people already paid for an inspection, they're serious, right? They spent all this money. I would rather not blow a deal because the other person can come with an offer. And since an offer means nothing, they could just be blowing smoke. And then they could do the inspection and they try to $20,000 reduction. So you still have nothing. So we try not, we give the seller the offers, but we try to explain that an offer is nothing. This person could just be giving you an offer, and then you're going to lose the other guy and tell him, sorry, it's the worst conversation for me. I hate to.
Yeah, that conversation.
That happens around here too in attorney review.
But it's interesting because a lot of people ask me, are they going to accept another offer? And it's interesting because I didn't know that was an option in your states. Because to me, I'm like, no, you're not going to accept another. You're the contract.
We have a lot of people leaving, and that is true. But it's interesting. Like there's two worlds in New York, especially Brooklyn. Like there's a lot of people leaving in some areas of Brooklyn, and then you have a lot of people coming wanting to live in the cool parts of Brooklyn, and they're getting outbid. Like where your sister lives, Jen. Like
I know. That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah, like it's like a bidding war for anything that you could get in that area. And they're usually younger couples. Like remember what Buffini was saying at R4? He's right. There's like a young generation of buyers that have a lot of money that are moving. They came here for college. They got really great jobs. And they're looking to buy condos and co-ops. And they're getting outbid every day. And then you have the exodus, the people that are ready to go. Yeah, they go into Jen. North Carolina is probably the most popular state because Florida got a lot harder because a lot of people don't want to owe anything. They're like, I want a house. But they're getting outbid. And like, I think that the reality is they think they get to sell their house. They have a lot of equity here, but they're not realistic when they come to you guys.
Yeah.
So because we know each other, we know each other's markets, it's like, wait, it's not what you think. Why don't you speak to Jennifer, North Carolina, and she'll direct you to which part of North Carolina you can afford. So that's what I love about knowing so many people in North Carolina because it's a big state, and these New Yorkers think they're going to go down there and they're going to get something for $200,000.
I do laugh. See, when I was planning the other day, I do have New Yorkers that call, and our prices are less expensive than New York. Definitely, our taxes are cheaper. Our weather's better. Other introductions are moving. But I mean, even Sia wants to move. So let's be clear, I'm not down in New York. I love New York, but I love North Carolina better. But it was Sia, you just said something. I was
people that call you.
Yeah, New Yorkers kill me when they call and they'll say, I'm not even gonna try to do a New York accent. I was going to attempt that would be horrible.
Please try.
No, it was just like you trying to say y'all. See, it's terrible. But it is interesting when they call and they'll be like, hey, I want an oceanfront house, 4 bedrooms, 4,000 square feet for 200,000. And I'm like,
do they ask you for a basement? Do you want a basement? And a basement.
A view of the ocean is a view of the ocean. It's
with a basement. Yes, that's true, because they're so used to having a basement. That's actually so funny you say that, because I had a client that was so upset when he moved out of state, and he was like, how come they don't have basements? I'm like, because they don't need basements.
See, and that's a good point. Yeah, we don't have basements here, which is interesting. So I heard from several builders, I'm not sure how true it is, but they started putting what they call a frog here, which is a furnished room over garage. And they started doing that in the late 90s, early 2000s, when there was an influx of northern people moving here, used to basements. But the reason why we don't have basements is that we're at sea level. I mean, I'm at the beach. You have a basement, it's going to be filled with water. Yeah, you're going to be under the water. You have to have a sump pump. There's a lot of things you have to have if you had a basement here, but just know it would keep water in it. You would not be able to use it. So it would not be good, but they put up these rooms, which is just basically another bedroom, but they call it a frog. So one more funny story, and then I want to get into more details about each of your state, but I had a New Yorker come in town and she's like, I want one of that room you were telling me about. And I'm like, the room? I'm sitting there trying to figure out what in the world she's talking about. And she's like, yeah, that room, that reptile room. And I'm like, what in the hell, a reptile room? I'm like, I'm thinking, oh, she's like, the snake room. I'm like, the frog.
Oh my God.
The garage. I don't think a snake is a reptile, but I don't think a frog is a reptile. I'm pretty sure that's an amphibian, but I thought it was funny. And then Nathan had said that he's not in an attorney state, that he drafts the contracts. So we draft the contracts here. I mean, the state provides it for us. It's a fill in the blank, same as Colorado. But the difference here is, I think Colorado, that they're a title state. So title companies do their closings. Here we have an attorney do the closing, but that's the only time the attorney's involved. Yeah. So
we do draft here too. It's just our attorneys will review it, which does help, I think, in New Jersey a little bit, because it kind of pushes the weight a little bit off the realtor and all the pressure, right? Because you can just say, hey, listen, talk to the attorney, review it with them. So it's kind of similar here.
That's interesting too. No, we do it all right here. And then what kind of inspections do you have in your particular states? Like, what's a normal? You get it under contract, then what do you do?
Well, we get it before contract. We usually home inspectors. They usually look for as is, so it's mostly structural. Mm-hmm. The roof, if there's any moisture in the basement.
I was just going to say that. Basements are such an issue.
We have the houses here are older, like Jennifer was saying. So a lot of people are concerned if there's any asbestos or I've actually had people that were moving to Manhattan that wanted to check the cabinets for lead. So that's another thing that people check for.
Cabinets? Why would a cabinet have lead in it?
What?
For lead-based paint.
On the cabinet.
Based on the year it was built?
No, it wasn't about the year it was built. They were actually checking the kitchen cabinets for lead paint. So wherever the manufacturer brought it in from, and they actually found lead paint. And also another thing that people, because the wiring is old, so they check the electrical panels to make sure all the GFIs are there. But termites is another thing that you will find in South Brooklyn a lot.
Yeah, we're termite country here too.
Yeah, we have a lot of gas. I very rarely see oil burners anymore.
We have such an issue with oil around here. It is crazy. You could talk to like any New Jersey realtor. They'll tell you the same. Like, oil tanks here are like, it's the boogeyman. They're the boogeyman. We're all afraid of the oil tanks
But you
because
have them. It's common to have an oil tank.
yeah. So what happens is, so like in northern New Jersey, especially, we have a lot of old houses. Like even my house, like I was saying, is 1903, and then I have a rental house that I rent out. That house 1956, right? But even that house, the 1956 one, when I went to buy that house, Alex Monaco, oil tanks are the kiss of death. Yes, so he knows. but when I went to buy that house, I did a home inspection. I accepted it as is, and they found a tank. And so what happens in New Jersey, right? Because we have these issues with the tanks, is that a lot of the older houses at some point ran on oil, and then they started converting them to gas. And back in the day, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was okay to just leave that tank there decommissioned in the soil. Some of them were decommissioned properly, and some of them were not. And so the problem is a decommissioned tank that was properly done, you take it out, it's a couple $1,000s, usually falls on the seller. It's very normal to check if there's a tank, do a tank sweep. Very normal to ask the seller to remove it. The issue is when the tank was not properly decommissioned and was just left behind. House was converted to gas. They left it for 40, 50 years. They didn't remove the oil. It's been leaking. And then you have you have a real problem there because that falls on the seller. So I just had a listing a couple months ago, about, I want to say 6-8 months ago, where it was a seller who had an investment property. He didn't live there. It was an investment, had like a store. It was mixed use. So a store, 2 residential apartments. And when he bought it 30 years ago, people really weren't checking for tanks like this. And this is something that was built in like 1910. So I go to sell it, and I asked, that's one of the first questions you ask, like, hey, do you know if there's a tank or if there ever was, whatever. He's like, I have no idea. It runs on gas. We should be fine. Okay. Buyer does a tank sweep. Of course, there's a tank. He takes out the tank. The tank had contaminated, the soil was contaminated. A little bit of the groundwater was contaminated. It cost him $30,000 to remediate it. Oh, and that fell on the seller. Yeah. So these things are very important as a buyer to check for, because if you don't know about that and now you buy the house, now it's on him, right? So it's like, that's what had happened to him. He bought it 20 years ago, had no idea that that tank was just sitting there, and it sat all those years. And then the day he goes to sell, he has a surprise. So our inspections are pretty tough. Like we have a general home inspection that checks for like radon gas. It checks for termites, systems like that. But we also have to do the tank sweeps depending on, the age of the house. If you're buying new construction, yeah, you don't really have to worry too much about a tank. But if you're buying a house that's, 1970s, 60s, 50s, 40s, or 1905, definitely at some point there was a tank. So you have to check what happened with that tank. And we also have in some areas septic tanks. You have to check the septic depending on where you are in North Jersey. Some areas have well water. You have to get the water tested. So it really, our inspections are extensive.
Our inspections are pretty extensive too. We don't have radon here. That is not part of a regular. So we have a home inspection, which is a base home inspection that sounds pretty much like yours. I mean, they check everything. But if you want a termite inspection, which you should have one, 100% of my homes get termite inspected, because probably 90% of them have termites of some sort, even if they're dead, so termite inspection is really important. Radon's not a big thing here, but somebody said something. So your heating source, I know that that's a big difference. I have a lot of New Yorkers are very confused about our heating source.
Gas.
So you guys have
gas.
You have gas.
We want boilers.
Oil heat is a thing of the past.
Yeah, so oil heat. I mean, there are still some houses that actually run on oil, but it's, it also depends on where you are. Like in certain counties, you'll see that there are more houses with oil tanks and it's normal. But for example, where I live in Bergen County, it's not normal. Like we're a suburb of New York City, right? So like from the end of my street, I can see New York City. So it's, it's a very suburb developed area. There's a lot of people. The houses, everyone converted to gas, right? So if you still have an oil tank, it's definitely, I would say, frowned upon. Like it's not, you're not going to have the same value in your house as if you had gas. So some people still run on oil. What happens is a lot of times people convert and just leave them there, decommissioned, sometimes properly done, sometimes not. But the heating source is a big deal. That's a really big deal over here.
See, we have to have a furnace. Right.
So that was the forced air, right? Furnace is forced air. That's a little different, right? Is it go through vents?
We don't have furnaces here. So we've got a HVAC. HVAC. I don't exactly know what it stands for, but we have a heat pump instead of a furnace. So everybody gets really confused with that. They're like, what do you mean you don't have a furnace?
We have furnaces.
Hired from somebody.
Heat pumps would be like in a condo. Like we don't have like furnaces, that's our
Yeah, but we don't have them here. We don't have furnaces here. Even in a 10,000 square foot house, it would have a heat pump.
That's crazy.
Because we don't get cold here. I mean, we do get cold, but we do get snow, but it's very, very rare. So we just on 99.9% of all of ours is electric heat, and it's with a heat pump. So it's really confusing because I actually got fired from a Boston client because I could not explain to her in words that she understood that we don't have a effing heat pump. I mean, and she kept saying, but you have to. And I'm like, let me call my HVAC guy. Let him explain this to you because you're not getting it. Like, we don't have it here.
Yeah.
And she actually fired me because she said I didn't know about the HVAC system. Funny enough, she called me back 2 weeks later to rehire me back to tell me she was wrong. I was like, I didn't tell you.
Yeah. I think it's hard for people.
Differences.
Yeah. It's big,
you guys don't
we
put the
use
heat
it.
on?
We what?
You'd never have to put the heat on in North Carolina?
We just don't have it. We don't have the furnace like you guys have. We've got a 2-part system. One's outside. The heat pump is usually up in
kind of like a splitter. Yeah, it's probably like what we call a splitter. Yeah.
It is. Yes, it's a 2-part unit. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We use the heat often. So it's like heat, it's a big deal, the heat source.
Yeah.
And how expensive, right? Because people don't like electric around here because they consider it more expensive. Like gas is like the way to go.
Yeah, it's hard. A lot of our neighborhoods don't have gas. I mean, very, very few actually has a gas like that's not in a tank. So propane, would come in a tank, but natural gas, there might be 20% of our neighborhoods that have natural gas. Most of them don't, maybe less than 20% actually.
That's so mind blowing to me.
That's what happens to all my New York, New Jersey people. They're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you mean?
New York City is trying to make new construction by a certain year to not use gas. And I think in bigger buildings, they might but they have not been able to convince people because they think it's very expensive.
Electric?
Yeah, but they are trying to make it where required, but I don't think they have won that. They keep trying to make it where everything moving forward has to be electric stoves, electric.
Yeah, they probably, a lot of the condos around here, like the newer ones especially, right? Like that's all electric. But yeah, people definitely prefer gas. I think the overall New York, New Jersey sentiment is they want gas. They don't like the electric idea. So
let me get through here. We got a couple of questions. We have a lot of hellos. I'm going to go back and we're going to quickly say our hellos to everybody. There's my mom.
Hey guys.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Hello.
Derek's New York. How far is Derek from you?
Well, Derek is probably like 6 hours, completely different. I forgot to say that New York City is different from upstate New York.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they operate completely different. Yeah.
I think people forget too how big New York actually is. Everyone, when they say New York, they usually assume like New York City and not, the rest of New York.
Well, I wouldn't know either. Okay, there's my friend John.
Hi, John.
A great accent.
Great accent. Yeah. He's talking about me. No,
operates exactly like Jen. Downstate. Yeah. We are different. We always have to be a little different in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
no attorneys at all in Colorado?
Well,
wow.
So they have the because it's a title state, right?
I'm kind of glad that there's attorneys. I know it takes a little bit longer. Like, I don't know, like here, if I close a cash deal 35 days, I'm super happy. 60 to 90 days is the average time it takes for something to close here.
Oh, wow.
That's actually longer than I thought. Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's better to have, personally, I think it's better to have attorneys. I'm probably just saying that because that's what I'm used to, but it really helps, right? Because as a realtor, at least here, we're doing so much already. You're there negotiating it. You have to be there for all the inspections. You're there every step of the way. The attorney helps a lot here in being able to properly advise that person of the legalities, right? If there's inspection issues, they're the ones that negotiate any inspection issues, we have a lot. Yeah, they negotiate that. And then for example, issues like if you do we call it use and occupancy agreement. If you do a rent back, they're the ones that negotiate all those terms, all of that. So it helps I think, divide the responsibilities in the transaction a lot.
That is so. I didn't realize that they also negotiated your repair. No, we do it all. There's no way in the world. I usually call the attorneys to make sure they haven't missed anything. And like,
Wow.
they make sure they agreed to give us $4,000 in lieu of any repairs or whatever. Then I have to call the attorneys and triple check behind the attorney. Like, we could actually get in trouble. Like, if an attorney puts something on a closing disclosure and we as a real estate agent don't review it first, we get in trouble, not the attorney.
See, here, no,
Wow.
it would be, I mean, yeah, you have to review it too, but it ultimately falls on the attorneys to look at everything and make sure everything is okay.
I mean, I guess it would fall into them under different legalities, but for us, as far as the real estate commission, they look at what we've done. So, Sia, Nathan's asking you a direct question.
Unfortunately, yes. And that has happened when I've worked for buyers. So it's basically, you tell them So when I talk to a buyer, I tell them with all my heart, please have an inspector, please have a lawyer, because if I show you something that you really want, you better be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
So it's really sad, but that's the way you operate here.
Yeah. Right. And
some realtors unethically send out multiple. I would never do that, but I've heard other realtors send multiple contracts, and whoever signs it first gets the house.
That seems
which I think is illegal.
That's terrible.
Yeah, there should only be one contract.
Yeah, that would scare me.
Yeah.
Wait, do y'all know Joseph? Joseph. I can't think of where
yes,
you're from.
I met him at R4.
I can't think where he's from, but I don't know. He's talking about
Maryland. He's from Maryland, I think.
Maryland. What's he talking about with the built-in pool?
I never sold a house built-in swimming pool. Very rarely here. You might have some, but I'm sure they didn't. Oh, yeah, I actually did.
What do you mean by built-in? Like in-ground pool?
Yeah, he's meaning an in-ground pool, but I don't know what the question is.
Staten Island, they have a lot.
We have pools here. We're warm.
Not much they check. They didn't check much. I remember the inspection just did one a couple of months ago. The inspector just checked the pump. I mean, he's just a liner.
Yeah. I mean, we have a pool. We'll have a separate. Yeah, you do a pool inspection. But the thing is here, like, you can't, like, depending on the time of year you're buying, right? Like, what are you really going to check? You just open up the cover. It's not that much.
Yeah. Yeah, here they would check that we have a pool, so you would check, but it would be a separate inspection. Let's see here. Contracts with a title escrow in order to do all inspections. Kind of, yeah, perfect. That's sort of like we do it. Oh, he was talking about, thank you, Elizabeth. She said that Joseph was talking about not the septic, Lord, but the basements being a pool. I didn't get that. Look, he does. Thank you. I get it now.
Got it.
I'm a little slow. It is late on Monday. It's been a long day. Sorry about that. Yes, it would be like a pool, but it would be like a gross, nasty pool. I don't even know. It would be more like I don't even know, a river maybe. I don't know what it would be like. It would be disgusting.
Yeah.
So then timeframes are completely different depending on the state. And it seems like even attorneys, the role of an attorney is completely different based on the state, from having really little to no interaction to writing the contract and negotiating every aspect of it, which is crazy to me. And then what about earnest money? Do you guys have earnest money?
The attorneys take care of that at contract. Once the buyer signs, they bring the deposit for escrow at the signing.
Yeah.
So you call it like a deposit.
Are the same way.
I have nothing to do with that. The attorney, the buyer signs the contract. He has to leave a deposit at that time. Once they do that, it goes over to the seller to sign, and that's when we have a fully executed contract.
I get it. And is there I'm trying to stay within legal terms and not get us in trouble. Is there I know there's not a standard. Everything's negotiable.
I do have a problem actually here. I'm actually trying to help a military. I don't know about you, Jen. It's very hard for me to sell to a military buyer. I've only sold to another veteran. So I'm trying to help this lovely couple that I was referred to. And I'm putting offers in and nobody wants to accept 100% financing because the industry standard, usually people put something down, 10%. Right. So you're dealing with a lot of people here that have a lot of money to put down. So it's very hard to explain to people coming from South Carolina, North Carolina, military areas, that I'm going to have a hard time. So I do put the offers in. That's my job, but I'm getting a lot of back. I'm getting it like we're not going to take that offer.
We have that issue here too, right? Because we're right outside of New York, and like we don't have a big. Unfortunately, we just don't have a big like community for that. So it's hard to get a VA offer accepted around here, and it's the same thing.
It's a struggle here, but is that the escrow deposit? Is that the deposit down on the house? Is that what they're putting down?
When you sign the contract, they want. So I have one. They want 3% down at the minimum. So that would be 20,000. But I'm like, we have to start helping, you know, and it kind of bothers me. So, like I said, the only time I was ever able to do it was when the seller was actually a veteran.
So he
understood.
So he had a heart.
Like we do deposits here, right? It's just that the realtors don't, like, as agents, we don't handle the deposits. But our contracts are a little bit different because, you know, you present an offer, it gets accepted, it gets signed, the attorneys then do attorney review. Once you go under contract, you have 10 days to submit a deposit. And the deposits really, honestly, they range because depending on what you're buying and how much you're putting down. Like if you're buying at 20% down, yeah, you have to put down maybe 5% as a deposit. But we get a lot of like FHA buyers, and FHA buyers are 3.5%. So obviously they can't put down usually, you know, 5%. Like you can't. So we do deposits. It range more from 5,000 to maybe 30,000, like on average. But that's handled by the attorneys after you're under contract, and that deposit's typically held by the seller's attorney in their trust account. So we don't, you know, have nothing to do with that.
So is that money refundable? Non-refundable?
Yeah, so in New Jersey, technically your deposit is refundable. You're protected, right, by inspection contingency and mortgage contingency. Of course, if you waive everything, then that's where essentially it really would become non-refundable. But for the most part, it's refundable.
Okay, can I tell you something? Sia, it is refundable, Sia?
It is, because you have the mortgage contingency. So then if you're not able to get a mortgage, if you do no mortgage contingency, but I don't think in New York, the lawyers like to keep deposits because it's just the legal battle. And that's another thing that really upsets me, right? It's really hard for a lawyer to take that on. Some lawyers are like, I'm going to keep their deposit. They don't care. It's really important that you work with a really good lawyer that has the seller's same ideology, right?
That's why it's important that you know your agent and get a good agent like you girls, ladies.
Yeah. Here it's tough in New Jersey too. People don't want, even if things completely backfire. I mean, in some instances you can try to keep it, and you'll have attorneys that will push for it, but you have to go to litigation, and you know, attorneys don't like doing that. So
can I tell you something that will baffle you? So we have two different deposits. Our contract's 100% different than yours now that I'm listening to you. So we have a fill in the blank that we'll fill in the due diligence time frame. Right. That is a date selected by us. Typically it's like 30, typically it's like 3 weeks, 21 days on average, kind of. And they have two different deposits. Both of them apply towards the price of the home. So just for easy math and a slow brain this evening, if the house was $100,000, you cannot buy $100,000 house here. Please, I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you an example. And if you put $1,000 due diligence down and $1,000 earnest money down, then you only owe $98,000 the price of your home because you put down $2,000, right? Difference is our due diligence money is a check made to the seller, and it is never refundable.
Wow,
that is so crazy.
Our contract reads.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? It is a way that the seller can back. I mean, not the seller. Sellers cannot back out. The buyer can back out for any reason or no reason, as long as they do so within that time frame. They will not get their due diligence money back. However, they will get their earnest money back.
Okay. And how much did you say due diligence is usually?
So, and this is the crazy part. It has been on our contract for about 10 years, but only about in the last 5 years have people really started using it. Past, I would put 0. Now it 100% depends on if there's multiple offers, because it is a check that goes directly. So when I bought my house, there were 4 offers on it, and I think we gave $20,000 non-refundable.
Oh,
to the seller.
That is crazy.
Accept this offer.
Wait.
So
So that means during an inspection, they would lose a deposit if they found something?
Oh yeah. Before inspections, before appraisals, before anything. So it's also really important to have a really good real estate agent that points out everything that they see. And I quickly tell somebody, I am not an inspector, but I have been doing this 17 years with thousands of homes sold at this point. Like I can not, I'm not an inspector. I don't promise to be an inspector, but a lot of those problems I can pinpoint and point out before they ever get a home inspection. So we don't have contingencies on our contract either. Not like you girls do, you women, you ladies, they, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but you know what I'm trying to say is here it is that pre-selected date that we come up with, me and the buyers come up with and put in, but it's the way the contract reads is it's a buyer beware state, do all your inspections, do your appraisal, do your surveys, do everything that you need to do within this time frame, and you can back out for any reason or no reason. House is being sold as is at all times. So sellers don't have to do the work. That's round 2 of negotiations would be for the repairs. And sellers don't have to do it. Sellers can say no, buyers can back out. Buyers would leave with their earnest money, but not their due diligence money.
Wow.
So that's crazy. Like what if a problem comes up and they agree to address it, right? Could they agree to address it, or is it
they can agree to address it. Yeah. So sellers could come back and say, absolutely, I'll fix that water damage, or absolutely, but they can also say no.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, here's the same thing, right? Like you're not obligated to do anything, but most of the time you try to reach an agreement. You know, now we have a really tough sellers market here. Like it's tough for buyers right now. Not sure if it's the same for you ladies, but here, you know, you're pretty much putting in an offer, over asking, short contingencies, big deposit. I mean, as much as you can possibly do, right? And so, yeah, oftentimes you have to say as is. But usually the way it's phrased is as is, except for major structural and environmental. And environmental would really like encompass what I was talking about before, as far as oil tanks and things like that. But yeah, people here do a home inspection and check. And the thing is too, I think the difference is like we have such older houses that sometimes things are uncovered that you really might not have seen, right?
We
like to the eye.
Not all the houses are older.
Yeah. So the sellers are usually willing to do things, even though they say no way. When there's an inspection, because once there's an inspection, those things come up.
It's
the
a material
sellers did not know, and they are willing to do the repairs because they know the next buyer is gonna, you know, there's no concealment of it. So we usually do work together to get the deal closed, and they have to actually ask our opinion. Yeah.
And the only time that I've had sellers get aggravated is when you have a brand new agent on the other end and they don't know and they ask for every single, because our inspections will come out 50 pages long, even if the house is brand new and there's no problems with it. I mean, the inspector wants to cover their own butt. So they want to make sure that they tell you every light bulb that's not working, every single thing. The tilt clip, that's the one that always kills me. The tilt clip and the stove. It's a $50 clip at any appliance store that literally means when the door's down and a child stands on the door, it won't fall over. Now, who in the world would allow your children to stand on the door of a stove? I mean, come on, really? Yeah. I mean, keep your kids off of your ovens and stoves. I mean, that's dangerous anyway. But it's on every single inspection. So that's the kind of like when you have somebody that says, do everything on the inspection report, a lot of times sellers will be like, no. But it's rare that somebody does that. And it's, most of the time people are willing to negotiate that.
Yeah, we work together because also the bank appraisal is going to happen, right? So all the things that they see, we usually try to rectify it before the bank comes so we could get everything moving as quick as possible.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah. So our amount down, I mean, it's all negotiable, but what we're starting to see is if there are no offers on it, it's about 1% of sales price divided between the due diligence money and the earnest money. And again, the earnest money is refundable. The due diligence is not. But it's a big deal because I think we're one of the only states that do that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, here, you know, it's very difficult. It really is very difficult for a seller to keep a deposit, even if that buyer was the buyer from hell. It really is. It's tough. Yeah. And most people will decide just not to pursue it. You know, there's times where you're like, oh, they really should because it's just not fair. But most people just decide not to do it because it's going to cost them money to hire an attorney to prove damages and all this stuff. So,
what's interesting
is you can't sell your house.
Yeah, I've got a lot of people from New York. Yeah, that's interesting because you just said that too, is that a lot of my New Yorkers, they're like, wait, I have to do all this before I actually know what's wrong with the house, which is what you said too. And yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. It's a tough pill, I think, for them to swallow because even, New York and New Jersey are different, but at least here, like we're protected by the inspection contingency. It's meant to protect buyers, but I think it's not really meant to protect buyers so much in North Carolina, right? It's buyer beware, so
Yeah,
it's
it's like you got to do it. And you know what's wrong with it. And if you buy the
yeah,
house, then you know you need to know what you're buying.
yeah, yeah. It's
Right,
very different.
yeah. Do your inspections before you go into contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here
No,
everyone always says as is too, but like things come up and they'll try to negotiate it a little bit and just make the deal work for the most part.
that's right. That's right. And then y'all do have termites. Both of you said you had termites because that's another
Yes.
thing we have in
And we have
Yeah.
to start working on it. We have to do the first. Usually we get, as long as they hire somebody to do the first treatment, we could get it closed. That's not going to stop a closing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have termites too, and the same thing. We get treatments, or sometimes, maybe they'll get the quote for the treatment and the seller just says, hey, here's the credit, and that's that. So
Yeah.
it depends.
Inspection by the purchaser. Yeah. I think South Carolina is similar to North Carolina. South Carolina just started, they just added the due diligence fee, but I think they do it slightly differently. I don't know. I need to talk to Maureen and see what they do in South Carolina. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that they have a due diligence due diligence money, but it's somehow it's different than North Carolina. So we need to figure that out.
She
But
said
yeah,
we don't use the contract. Okay.
The good thing about New York being, taking a little bit longer, usually I put the house on the market. As soon as I get a commitment, it takes 45 days. And then my sellers could go down and close the same day as their home. So it's actually really bad and good because it only takes you guys 30 days to close in North Carolina. So they could go down with the commitment and they could start looking at homes we could have 2 closings within the same day. Like as long as they put their house on the market here, because we take 60 to 90 days, there it takes 30 to 6, so it works out for the sellers a lot.
Yeah, I have one right now that's in New York and they're trying to sell their house. And then it's always interesting because once they get it under contract, then we have to wait like the 90 days because it's like,
yeah.
But I mean, you can, as long as, and that's where I think it's important too, to have agents on both ends that you know and trust, because it's really important for me to work one-on-one with Sia and Jen to make sure, just like they said, so when you're trying to sell your house there and buy one here, we can coordinate those variables, which are a lot of moving parts at that time.
Right. And something that's interesting that I've noticed in other states that doesn't really happen in New Jersey is like here, I've seen that some of my sellers in New Jersey will go out of state and they'll put an offer on something contingent on their sale, right? Like that's where the money's coming from. And in New Jersey, it's very difficult to get your offer accepted contingent on a sale, right? Like New Jersey people don't want to accept. If you present an offer like that, you're basically there's 10 offers. Good luck. You're not getting it. Like because I get that a lot where people will try to sell like let's say a Brooklyn house and they'll say, oh, I'm cash, but it's contingent on that sale and it's going to take 3 months. And we have such a competitive market that usually a seller won't accept that because they'll have a buyer that's offering the same amount and can close in 45 days.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Here they wouldn't accept it. But a couple of years ago, New Jersey and other states would accept that.
Oh yeah. When it was more of a buyer's market.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah. Right now, it's just too competitive, and everyone's trying to, compete to close the fastest, and it's just you can't do it.
No, it's interesting. The market's picking up here. It doesn't sound like it is a seller's market still. We only have 2 months of inventory available, but it's not where you're seeing it, Jen, with the multiple offers and going above.
It's brutal. I mean, you have a house listed like there's a house in my neighborhood listed for 600, sells $100,000 over asking. Like that's the market we're in here. Like things sell for much. What happened? I'm sorry. Would you say?
They're all fleeing because you can't even
and that's the thing that like our northern New Jersey people, like the people that are from northern New Jersey, right? Like they're so shocked when they see these, because what happens is we get the Brooklyn and the Queens people, right? Like they come in, they're used to paying more money. And so houses that a couple years ago were 350,000 here, right? Like now they're worth 650,000.
Yes.
And it's like I get a lot of people. Like for example, I had a listing one time a couple months ago in North Bergen, that's Hudson County, and the buyer who came in with their agent, like he was from Brooklyn. And he sold his place. He told me, I met him there one time with the agent. He basically said, yeah, I sold this place for $2 million. I have all this cash. They buy it. And he paid over asking. You as a buyer, it's very tough if you're from the area, if you're local, to compete with somebody like that.
Yeah,
so we get a lot of New Yorkers coming in doing that.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of people like in Brooklyn, they so the average, I think the lowest house, like 680, maybe 700 for a tiny house in Brooklyn. So they keep going more and more south, towards Queens. And then they're like, you know what? Forget it. Let's go to New Jersey.
But that's so funny.
Or North Carolina.
Yeah, these New Yorkers that come in.
Well, they have to work in Manhattan, right? So like if you have to work in Manhattan,
yeah. What's hilarious is like a lot of the New Yorkers I'm like, sometimes they don't realize that like we live in this is an expensive area too, right? Like they think that because they went to New Jersey, it's farmland and it's cheaper. And I'm like, it's not that much cheaper. Like we have an expensive area. Our taxes are expensive. The average house in my neighborhood is $650,000-$700,000 with $13,000 in taxes a year. And so they're like, oh wow, I didn't know that.
That's a lot. Here I think it's like 0.90. So like if a house is 900, you're probably gonna pay 8,000 in taxes. Right.
Yeah.
So
a 900 house here would probably pay like 15 or so, depending on the neighborhood and the county. You have houses that are like 600,000 paying 15. You have houses that are, 2 million paying $30,000 in tax. It really depends on where you are, but our taxes are very, very high. And a lot of times people don't realize that. And when I get buyers, especially buyers from places like Texas or other areas, they're so shocked when they see what.
See, I was trying to think. My house is like an $800,000 house, and our taxes are like $3,200 a year.
What?
Yeah, that's really good.
I'm moving down. Are you serious?
And so I'm saying,
32.
I would say, as long as the weather's like right, as long as it snows where you are and the taxes stay high, you guys will always move to me because our taxes are way cheaper.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
Our taxes are so high that like people can't afford it. Yeah, like you might see a house that you maybe can afford on paper, right? The actual mortgage and everything, but then you add the taxes. Taxes are $1,000 a month because they're $12,000, and now you really don't qualify.
Wow.
So, you know what's sad though, too? New Jersey, like the older people, right? They're still paying those taxes, so they're like, "Wait, I might as well sell and go down to Jennifer."
Well, that's what I get. So most of my sellers, they're about to retire, and then what they're making on retirement, they can't afford. Their house is paid off. I get a lot of people like that. Their houses are paid off, but their tax bills sometimes are, anywhere from 8 to 15. I've had people with $20,000 tax bills. And they're like, okay, well, my kids are grown up. They don't live here anymore. My taxes are all this money. Yes, New Jersey does have really great public schools. I love New Jersey. I will, as much as everyone complains, and even I complain about the taxes, we do have really good school districts here. So I understand the wanting to pay, for that for your kids. But of course, once your kids aren't in the school districts, you're like, what am I paying this for? Yeah. And so then they go to sell and they move to places where the taxes are better so they can enjoy that money and live better. Like in North Carolina, Florida is a big one too. Delaware, Texas, all these different places.
Wow. And then one of the bills that they don't expect that we have is wind and hail insurance, which you have to have. If you have a mortgage on your home, you have to have it.
I've never heard of that in my life.
Because of our proximity to so many beaches. My understanding, anything under 100 miles to a beach. So I literally have like 7 beaches surrounding me, all within like 20 to 45-minute drive. So with that wind and hail insurance, which depends on the price of your home, there's a lot of variables as to what your house, how much it is, but it's about $1,200 to $2,000 roughly a year. But it's just it's just an insurance that nobody's ever heard of, unless you live in the beach.
Gotcha. Yeah, here typically we just have regular home insurance, but then what happens a lot of times in New Jersey, like especially northern New Jersey, we have a lot of different towns or even sections of certain neighborhoods that are flood zones. And then you get stuck paying the flood insurance too. So then when you put the flood insurance together with the taxes, with the high mortgage, with everything, it becomes really, for some people, just they can't do it.
Yeah. And so Faith, wind and hail is required. Flood insurance is not required unless you're in a flood zone that the bank requires it. So all of us here in North Carolina, in Wilmington, I can't speak for all of North Carolina, are in a flood zone. X is the flood zone that the mortgage company does not require you to have flood insurance. If
Right.
you are in AE or VE, those require flood insurance, and that 100% determines on the elevation of your house. So I am in a flood zone. I'm in the AE flood zone, but I think I pay less than $1,000 a year because my house is on stilts.
Yeah.
Nice.
We have pretty high flood. You know, I actually grew up in a neighborhood, it's called Little Ferry, which at one point used to be underwater. But that neighborhood right where I grew up, most of it is a flood zone. Sia, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's where the circle used to be, Route 46. Okay, after Hackensack. That's where I grew up, and most of that town is a flood zone. So like my parents' house, you know, a couple years ago before they sold it, they were paying, I think it was like $5,000 a year in flood insurance.
Wow.
But then their taxes are also it was like at that time, I think like 8,000 or 9,000. So it's like it gets, depending on where you are, the flood insurance can really make or break a lot of deals around here, because if you're already paying 10,000 in the average tax bill, and then
you can't afford it. Yeah.
It just becomes unaffordable. So the flood zone houses here typically end up selling for less than what a house would be not in a flood zone because of that issue.
Well, that makes sense because you have to pay that difference. Wow.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else? What kind of advice do you give your buyers, sellers, and agents? To call a really good real estate agent.
Call Jennifer or Jennifer if you're going to Jersey.
If you're relocating,
we've got connections everywhere.
People ask me questions about, like I said, North Carolina. I can't answer a question. Like they're like, I want to move to North Carolina. That means nothing. I refer them to you so you could point them in the right direction. Same thing with New Jersey. A lot of people think they could afford Bergen County, but they can't, you know?
Yeah, they don't realize it's not that much cheaper. So it's like, yeah, I do the same thing. I'm like, hey, listen, like, that's great. I could talk to you about New Jersey all day long, but let me point you in the right direction. And I think too, with people, especially like in these really tough competitive markets, like with buyers, I think the key is to be patient and also to really be open, maybe to looking at homes that perhaps weren't at the top of your list. Maybe you have to do a little bit of work to it. You're not going to get it all in this market, unfortunately. At least where I am, it's tough. So I always tell people, listen, if there's 10 things you want, if the house has 7, go for it.
Take it.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't go at the top of your budget.
Yeah, exactly. Always plan for a rainy day. I always tell them, I'm like, you don't know, right? Like we talked about before, we have furnaces, we have water heater, we have all these very expensive things in our homes. I'm like, you have to plan for a rainy day. If something happens to it, you know, do you have the funds to fix it, right? If you're using all your money and dumping it into this house, yeah, you can set yourself up to really have some issues later on. So that's important too. And with sellers, you know, we have a very, very good sellers market. The biggest issue I have with sellers is they want to sell. Their house is worth so much money, right? And they're like, where do we go? I'm like, okay, you really have to start to think, like, where do you want to go? Because you can sell your house tomorrow, but what's your plan, right? In 45 days, they're going to say, hey, get out. So we have to come up with a plan so that we know exactly how we're going to do this.
And tenants or everything, you have to have a plan because you have to know where your tenants are going. Are your tenants staying? And I think that for me, I don't just want you to list your house. I want you to know exactly where you're going to go and talk to usually it's the opposite. They start looking and all right, I really love this house in North Carolina and I'm ready to go. And those people will sell right away. Yeah. So if they don't know where they're going, they're just going to waste your time.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's really important. Yeah. And I'd rather them know and feel comfortable. So here, a lot of parents want to move where their kids are. That's a majority of my sellers also, besides retirement, like their kids have moved on. So they want to get closer to their kids.
Yeah. No, I would agree. A lot of it's interesting because people are moving, the people that move away from here are people that moved here when they retired from New York, New Jersey. Their kids, okay, let's keep in mind, 90% of their kids follow because it's so much nicer here. But the ones that don't follow, when the parents get older and need help, they might need more help from the doctors. They're just getting older and need more assistance in life. They tend to move back to their
That's so
children.
funny. I have a closing on Friday, and the guy is like 85 years old, and he's moving back from Florida because his daughter, he needs her help.
Yep. I've got
And
3
he can
listings
walk
right
to
now.
things. Yeah.
All 3 of the
Yeah.
ones, I mean, I've got more than 3 listings, but the 3 that I have are all moving back to go back home.
That's
To
crazy.
move
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah, they move here because it's less expensive and all the reasons. Weather's better, taxes are cheaper, and then they get here and they get in their 80s, and then they start realizing they need their family back.
Yeah. The weather's a big one too, right? Like the weather, New York, New Jersey weather is tough. I mean, these past couple winters haven't been that
Been
bad,
lucky though,
but
not really. Yeah, it's been
yeah, they
good.
haven't been that bad, but people get tired, especially, like if you have tenant properties. I have so many clients that they're like, I don't want to shovel snow anymore.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I have one client from the
I've
Bronx
never shoveled
actually.
snow in my life.
Yeah.
I don't even
Really?
know
Yeah.
what that
Well,
looks
come
like.
over. Well, we haven't had. I think we had nothing this year. Maybe a little bit. No.
We had
I
it
didn't
like
shovel.
twice, but yeah, you get
You
tired.
get it
You have
more.
to shovel I have a rental. I have to get the rental property has
Oh
to
my
be
God.
cleaned. My house has to be cleaned,
What
and
about
then
vacant
if your
properties?
tenants, yeah, you
I
got to
have
clean
to
it.
shovel. Yeah, if
Yeah.
I have people that left and they handed me the keys. I remember one year I had to go like 5 houses and 5 listings, and I was shoveling their properties because they
Yes,
already
yeah,
moved.
me too. Throwing down salt. I used to do REOs. With the REOs, I was like, in a panic to make sure I got there on time to get everything cleaned. And because, God forbid somebody falls, like people here,
Exactly.
that's a big thing. New Jersey lawsuits with the snow and everything, you have to be really careful. So it's really important. And it's also really important as a seller agent. Like when I have listings and I tell the sellers, hey, listen, like get this cleaned. You don't want someone to trip and break an ankle in front of your house. That's not,
Yeah.
No, I had a past admin that worked for me for a couple of years that was from Chicago, and she would send me pictures of her Chicago agent showing houses in like full ski wear, and I'm like, whoa, like that just looks miserable.
yeah.
I've never been in weather that cold.
And remember, New Jersey, New Yorkers, if you say you're going to show up, you better show up.
Yeah, no matter
They're
what.
like, hey,
No, right? Yeah.
they're like, you're still coming, right? And there's like 4 feet of snow outside, and you're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's not like that here. We have just a threat of a flake. Everybody closes down. And that's when I usually call my New York and New Jersey people. And I'm always laughing because I'm like, hey, listen, I know you know how to drive in it, but we don't. We don't even have salt for the streets. Like we truly don't have anything here. So when we do get snow, it's like stay off the roads because I mean, it's bad here.
We're very prepared here. So people are like, it's kind of like, hey, you got to go to work.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, I can't imagine. Yeah, my aunt lived in Ohio, and she was talking about taking my cousin, who at the time was in 3rd grade, to school and how they had to shovel their car out to be able to take them. And I'm like, okay, what does that even look like? And
the worst part. Yeah, like in New York City, right? Or even parts of Jersey, like in Hudson County, Hoboken, Jersey City, where there's no parking. You have to shovel a spot for yourself. Park your car, and then you leave, and now someone else is taking that spot. So you have to carry a shovel and just shovel out spots for yourself. It's so miserable.
Horrible. There's no spot.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So I'm trying to think, like, even like as a child, like when I when I first got my driver's license, I think my dad gave me one of those ice scrapers, but I literally can't remember every time using it. I remember one time I had to use a credit card, like to scrape the ice from my windows, but I've never, no, I don't have, no snow.
You're so lucky.
You could have this pleasure.
Yeah.
Move on down.
I know.
Anyway, it was so good talking to you, ladies, and I appreciate you and thank you for your time and your energy. And Jen, you were nervous, ended up not being nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you,
it's
Jennifer.
like alive, but it's not like alive.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate
you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.